Please say hello to Johnny Carson.
For decades, Johnny Carson was more than a television host, he was an American ritual. He tucked the country into bed at night with laughter, charm, and a voice that felt like home. When he retired, millions cried. When he disappeared from public life, millions wondered why. And after his passing, people believed they had already seen every interview, every show, every joke, every moment he ever filmed. His legacy felt complete. Until something shocking surfaced. A final television special one. Carson himself, recorded near the end of his life, has been locked away for years. Executives refused to air it. Lawyers buried it. Studios denied its existence. Rumors whispered that Carson revealed too much about fame, regret, love, mistakes, and the real cost of becoming America's greatest host. Some insiders claimed the special was emotionally dangerous. Others said Carson's honesty would destroy how the world remembered him. And so the footage was sealed, hidden, forgotten. But now, after decades of silence, the final unaired special is emerging. People who have seen fragments describe it as heartbreaking, beautiful, and unlike anything Johnny ever allowed on screen. It isn't just jokes. It isn't just memories. It's a confession. What did Johnny Carson reveal on camera that terrified the industry enough to hide it? And why is the world finally allowed to see it now? For generations, Johnny Carson was the heartbeat of late-night television. His laugh, his timing, his effortless charm, everything about him made America feel lighter. He didn't just interview guests. He turned strangers into family. Night after night, behind that iconic desk, he stitched together a nation with humor that felt gentle, clean, and honest. People didn't watch Johnny Carson just to laugh, they watched to feel safe. And when he retired, it was as if the world collectively swallowed heartbreak. There was no replacing him because there was no second Johnny Carson. The curtain came down, and the man who had been visible to millions every evening suddenly vanished. No appearances. No documentaries. No guest interviews. Nothing. And the silence only made him more mythical. But deep inside NBC's archive vault, something was quietly gathering dust. A project Johnny had filmed in secret long after leaving. The Tonight Show. It wasn't a reunion special or a nostalgia piece or a comedy hour. It was Johnny Carson speaking more openly than he ever had in his life about fame, aging, fear, and what he regretted most. Executives who previewed it decades ago walked away stunned. They claimed it wasn't the Johnny viewers knew. They felt the public wasn't ready to see their hero stripped of jokes and armor. And so, instead of airing it, NBC locked it away under legal restriction. Only a tiny handful of people even knew it existed. During Carson's retirement, rumors about his disappearance spread everywhere. Some said he was tired of people. Others said illness pushed him away. But the truth emerging from this lost special paints a deeper, more painful picture. Johnny apparently wanted the world to understand why he left show business so completely. Why he refused interviews and why he turned down every invitation to return to television. He speaks with a tremble something audiences never saw. In this unreleased special, Johnny confesses that the applause he once lived for became a cage. The laughter he adored turned into a reminder that he was aging faster than the world around him. He admits he wasn't just retiring from TV, he was running from it. For much of his career, Johnny Carson hid a private loneliness. To millions, he seemed charming and social. But offstage, he was a man who preferred solitude, quiet, the ocean, and long drives alone. The special reportedly shows him reflecting on the painful truth that fame cost him more than he ever admitted. Failed marriages. Lost friendships. Missed years with family. Nights where he would go home after making the world laugh and sit in silence for hours wondering who he was without the suit. Desk and spotlight. Most viewers never imagined their favorite entertainer crying when cameras stopped rolling. But this special suggests he did. There is one moment insiders describe that stands out. Johnny looks directly into the camera and says he wished he had spent more time being a father than being America's entertainer. The man who made millions feel understood suddenly admits he barely understood himself. Audiences never witnessed this rawness. Carson always protected his privacy like treasure. But in this unaired footage, that protective wall finally comes down. Why was the special buried? Some executives feared it would tarnish his legend. They didn't want the world to know that the king of late night sometimes felt broken. They wanted the myth, not the man. And for years, the myth won. The special became a ghost story rumored to exist, impossible to prove. But time has changed everything. Younger producers now believe viewers deserve to see the real Johnny, even if it wasn't perfect. They say the footage reveals something precious. A man who loved deeply, hurt deeply, and lived honestly behind closed doors. The decision to air the special now isn't just television. It's history returning from the dead. As details from this lost recording surface, the world is preparing to meet Johnny Carson again. Not the one behind the desk, but the one behind the soul. And when the full truth unfolds, it may reshape how we remember the most beloved host in American history. The truth behind Johnny Carson's unaired final special begins long before the cameras rolled. It begins in the quiet space after fame, where applause fades and reality settles in. When Carson stepped away from The Tonight Show in 1992, the world assumed he was content, wealthy, and ready to enjoy the reward of a legendary career. But the truth is, Carson struggled deeply with the silence that followed. Friends later said retirement didn't relax him, it haunted him. A man who had spent 30 years speaking to millions suddenly sat alone with his thoughts. Wondering if anyone still cared, NBC kept calling, offering him returns, reunion nights, tribute shows. He refused every time. But Carson wasn't angry. He was scared. He believed that coming back and seeing a smaller audience, a weaker impact, would destroy the image the world held of him. He wanted to be remembered as the king, not as a man who stayed too long. Still, the urge to speak never left him. For years, Carson privately wrote ideas, jokes, reflections, even confessions that he refused to share publicly. It wasn't until the late 1990s that he finally agreed to record something. It wouldn't be a talk show. It wouldn't be comedy. It would be a letter to America, to fame, and to the family he felt he had failed. Carson was brutally honest with those around him. He wanted to speak while he still could. He wanted to leave behind something deeper than punchlines. And so the special began filming inside his Malibu home, with a skeleton crew sworn to secrecy. People who were present said Carson was different that day. His eyes no longer danced the way they once did. His shoulders, always proud and tall on stage, curved forward. He walked slowly, like a man carrying invisible weight. When the cameras started rolling, he didn't smile. He didn't perform. Instead, he began by saying 4 words no one expected. "I was never happy." Witnesses say the room froze. This was Johnny Carson, television's greatest entertainer, admitting something so human, so vulnerable that a few people actually cried behind the lens. Carson didn't talk about ratings, fame, or celebrity drama. He talked about the toll of laughter. He said being funny destroyed his ability to be taken seriously. Millions saw him as warmth and humor, but at home, he often sat in silence. Feeling misunderstood, he spoke about his marriages, how the job consumed him, how show business ate every holiday, every date night, every chance to be present. "I was married to the audience," he said, "and it was a marriage I couldn't escape." He admitted regret for the pain he caused his children, especially his son Rick, who struggled for years with addiction and died before Carson could repair their relationship. The special wasn't scripted. It wasn't polished. It was raw. Carson confessed fears of death, fears he had wasted his youth on fame, and fears that once the spotlight vanished, no one would love him for who he really was. He even said he understood why celebrities turn to darkness when the applause stops. It isn't ego. It's grief. At one point, Carson paused for nearly a full minute. Those who watched later described it as the most powerful silence they had ever seen. Then he whispered, "I built the dream, and I lived the dream. But dreams end." Nobody tells you that. Hearing Johnny Carson admit loneliness and regret was heartbreaking. But it was what he revealed next that changed everything, and maybe the reason the special was hidden. Everyone involved in Johnny Carson's unaired special agrees that the turning point came when he stopped talking about himself and started talking about the industry that made him a legend. For most of his life, Carson protected Hollywood. He never exposed secrets, never attacked networks, never blamed producers. But in this recording, for the first and only time, he let his guard down. He spoke with a quiet intensity about how television changed during his career. Carson admitted that early in his life, Hollywood felt magical, a place where talent mattered, Writers were respected, and audiences decided what succeeded. He said he used to walk into the studio every afternoon feeling grateful, almost humbled. But by the 1980s, he felt that the industry had grown cold and corporate, ruled by rating sheets, boardroom decisions, and people who had never stepped on a stage. Then, he revealed something that shocked even the small crew filming him. He confessed that toward the end of his Tonight Show years, NBC executives were pressuring him to retire long before he was ready. Some believed he was too old. Others thought the audience wanted something younger, louder, more modern. Carson said he stayed silent because he didn't want to feed gossip or divide viewers. But the most stunning admission was that he believed his exit was carefully engineered, not celebrated. He described meetings, ignored emails, and sudden changes in studio behavior. According to those who heard the full recording, Carson said, "They wanted me gone before I knew it myself. And once I accepted that, I realized how replaceable fame makes you feel." Carson then spoke about the emotional crash that followed. He said that after the farewell show aired, he waited by the phone expecting friends, producers, and network heads to reach out. Very few did. The silence hurt more than leaving, he admitted. At this point in the special, Carson's voice apparently broke. He said something almost no performer of his stature had ever dared to say on camera. "I learned too late that fame isn't love. The audience loves the idea of you, not the person living underneath." Witnesses recall that everyone in the room avoided eye contact, afraid their own emotions would disrupt the moment. Carson went on to talk about what he saw happening to comedians after him. He worried that comedy was turning into cruelty, that late-night television was becoming political warfare, not entertainment. He said he was grateful he retired when he did because he wouldn't survive in a world where jokes were turned into headlines, social media storms, and reputations destroyed overnight. He then spoke about death with chilling honesty. He admitted he had spent years pretending not to fear it, but in truth, he was terrified not of dying, but of disappearing into history without meaning. He revealed that this special was his way of defeating that fear, not by being funny, but by being remembered as a human being. And then came the moment that likely sealed the special away for decades. He blamed television itself for the worst tragedies in his life. He said the pressure of The Tonight Show contributed to the collapse of his marriages. He said the fame robbed him of the chance to help his son Rick before it was too late. He expressed guilt that his success may have played a part in Rick's struggles. The room reportedly went silent as Carson said, "If I hadn't been chasing America's laughter, maybe I could have saved my own family." Those words, spoken on camera by the most beloved host in television history, felt like an earthquake. Some executives feared that airing them would forever darken Carson's image. Others believed viewers would see a man broken by the very dream they admired. And just when the special seemed to have reached its emotional peak, Carson revealed something even bigger, something that stunned the crew into absolute silence. It would make this recording far too dangerous to broadcast. When Johnny Carson's unaired special reached its final stretch, those in the room said the entire atmosphere changed. The lights felt dimmer. Carson, who had been speaking calmly, suddenly looked heavier, like he was about to reveal something he'd carried inside his chest for decades. And what he said next was the reason this recording never saw daylight. Carson confessed that during the peak of his Tonight Show reign, he had been offered multiple opportunities to become an even bigger cultural force. Movies, international tours, political interviews, and even chances to run major networks. He turned all of it down. The world believed he did so out of humility. But in this unaired special, Carson admitted the truth was far darker. He feared power because he knew power would expose the parts of himself he spent his entire life hiding. He spoke openly about fame addiction, describing it as a silent hunger. He said applause becomes oxygen, laughter becomes nourishment, and the moment it ends, a performer can feel like they're suffocating. He admitted that after retirement he watched old footage of himself, not for nostalgia, but just to feel alive again. He told the camera, "I knew it was unhealthy, but I didn't know how to stop." Then came the revelation that stunned even the crew. Carson admitted that near the end of his career, he struggled with depression so deep that he feared waking up. He described sitting alone in his home late at night, staring at the ocean, thinking about how a man could give laughter to millions and still feel like a ghost inside his own home. He said Hollywood taught him how to smile convincingly, even during grief. Carson revealed something even more heartbreaking. He believed he did not deserve the love he received. He said audiences worshiped the character Johnny Carson, but the man behind it felt like an imposter, socially anxious, distant, private, and often overwhelmed by life. He asked, almost whispering, "If people knew who I really was, would they still love me?" Then... Carson dropped a single statement that caused executives to bury the entire recording. He warned the world that the entertainment industry was destroying future generations of performers the way it destroyed him. He said he had watched young comedians and late-night hosts chase digital fame and online applause, terrified that their careers would collapse if they missed one trend. He called Hollywood a place that eats people alive and then applauds the bones. At one point, he leaned closer to the camera and said the line the networks never wanted anyone to hear. "If I were starting today, I wouldn't survive. They would break me." Experts who reviewed the footage years later said this single sentence risked rewriting how people viewed the industry. It wasn't nostalgic. It wasn't gentle. It was a warning, and then the special took one final turn, becoming more intimate than anything Carson had ever shared publicly. His voice softened. He began speaking to the people watching, not to fans, not to producers, not to historians, but to his family. He apologized to his ex-wives for being absent, to his children for being unreachable, and to his son, Rick. He left a message no father should ever have to record. Witnesses say Carson's hands shook as he told Rick he wished he had hugged him more, listened more, believed him more. He said if he could trade every standing ovation for one more conversation with his son, he would do it without hesitation. After he finished speaking, he covered his face and cried. For nearly 2 minutes, no words were spoken. Just breathing. Just silence. Toward the end, Carson looked into the lens with a clarity that stunned everyone present. He said he hoped the world would remember him not as a superstar, but as a man who tried his best to make them smile even on nights he couldn't smile himself. Then he said goodbye. Not with a joke. Not with applause. But with a whisper. This is Johnny saying, "Good night." Producers watching knew instantly the world could never handle the truth they had just witnessed. It wasn't a TV show, it was the soul of a legend laid bare. And that is why the footage was locked away for decades. It wasn't just emotional. It was honest. Too honest. Now, after so many years, its existence forces the world to ask one haunting question. Do we really want to see our heroes as human? Or do we prefer the myth?